Welcome to Chicken on Nick and Sean Anonymous. I'm Sean,
I'm Nick.
and today we're talking about Star Wars Ewok Adventures Caravan of Courage. What do you think, Sean?
Overall, the movie was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
By the way, there's two, so we're going to do a second one.
Yeah. If the sequel is on the same par as this one, I don't think it's going to be that big of a slog to sit through. I was kind of worried that when we started this, I had never seen it. Nick,
I felt like I didn't get bored at any point with the first one.
Well, you have
but I could see where when I watched it as a kid, where I would drift off in attention. Like I was like, oh, like this part, like I might have missed because like I was a kid, you know, my attention had wandered.
Yeah, and see, I've never seen this as a kid. This was my first time viewing it, so I had heard kind of like legends about this movie existing, and that it was basically not good. You know what I mean? I feared the worst. I feared like Star Wars Holiday Special levels of bad. But this one, it was charming in a way, where I really felt like there was care and attention given to a lot of it that I didn't necessarily expect. A lot of the effects were pretty passable for the time, although they did use a lot of real world animals to kind of fill out.
So like in the first part, so it's like the crash site of the parents of the two siblings. Probably 5-6 minutes later, they come back to the kids' crash site. I guess the kids were driving their own
ship. I think the parents just didn't know what happened, and then before they were able to find out, the monster came and stole the parents. So I don't think the parents were. I think they were like, it's one of those things where like, oh, where's the kids? And then like before they were able to find them, there's a giant monster comes out of the woods. He looks like a giant hairy monster.
It was the same wreckage, but like what they did was they would like film like a little bit above it and closer to it.
Right. Yeah. They definitely had a limited. They definitely had a limited budget. They definitely had a limited set and production design. So little things like that I can forgive, where they kind of reused some of the sets in the first third of the movie. But what really surprised me is the visual effects that they ended up implementing in the second and third part of the movie were actually, a lot of them were very good. So I can give some of the earlier set design a bit of a pass because the movie definitely used its budget where it needed to. Two kids, they get stranded on a planet.
Stranded like in the forest,
right.
On Endor.
Right. It's the forest moon of Endor, and we know that, but they don't know where they are. And so, of course, they run into Ewoks, which in this movie are much nicer when they find humans for the first time than they were in Return of the Jedi, where...
Okay, so it's called a shuttlecraft. That's what the word I was trying to get out. That's why I didn't say ship at the end of that sentence.
Yeah, but I also don't think it's like a canon shuttlecraft in the Star Wars universe. It's not like an A-Wing or, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, it looked vaguely Star Wars-esque, but if you know anything about Star Wars canon, you'll know that like every ship and intricacy is detailed. But again, in this movie, the Ewoks are a lot nicer. The first thing they did when they found Luke and Leia is try to eat them. They're not shown to be cannibals in this movie. Or they're not even shown to really eat meat. Other than the fact they hunt this large...
So the kids' names are Mace and Sindel. I'm assuming Mace is the guy and Sindel is the girl?
Yeah, they don't really use each other's names that much.
So yeah, the Ewoks discover the wreckage and the children, and it becomes clear that the children must establish trust with them in order to embark on an adventure to rescue their parents.
Wow, Nick. The back of the box couldn't have said it better itself.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's the.
See how I I went straight into like half a sentence, and like I just made it work.
The plot of the movie is not very complicated. Two kids stranded on an island. The Ewoks find the kids, like you said, and then for some reason the girl's sick. They're like, hey, let's give this girl some medicine. This is really where up until this point, the boy really hasn't done anything except for like be really prejudiced against the Ewoks. So he's like, okay, well, let's go get more medicine. Mini little adventure to go get more medicine, and the boy does the dumbest thing possible. He sees a little furry thing in a tree. He walks over to the tree, and he tries to grab the little furry thing.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And I immediately was like, well, that's not going to be a furry thing. That's going to be like a snake.
You know what? Now I have a memory of like playing, like, okay, so I'll start out with this. So it's not just like a movie. I actually like used to act this out with my neighbor, like when I was like a kid, like a toddler-ish, like between toddler and like sentient being, you know?
Right, yeah.
So like
8, 9, and 10.
So I would wear like these like snow boots, and we would like get like all, like in the mud and shit, and like we'd act like the guys from Ewoks. But there were never any Ewoks. It was all in our imagination. So.
Well, none of us thought there were any Ewoks, Nick.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be funny.
Anyway, and again, Nick has a personal history with this movie. He watched it when he was young. He really enjoyed it. He bought the DVD and was like, "We have to watch this." I was like, "Fine," you know. I'm like, "All right." I've sat through some pretty awful things before.
At least it wasn't painful. It was like
it was
actually kind of fun.
It's interesting enough as a time capsule of like that era in between the Return of the Jedi and George Lucas, remastering and then making the prequels. There was a 20-year gap where there really wasn't anything Star Wars, like, other than books, novels, and comic books, which are all now uncanon anyway, but were never really given much respect, never adapted into TV movies. So this was a weird little, I guess they ended up producing a short series from it, from what the Wikipedia said.
Interesting.
Yeah, they said that the George Lucas basically, after the Star Wars Holiday Special, which is a notorious train wreck, he really wanted to rein in the productions of any movies or offshoots of the Star Wars. So he actually had direct control of this. So he hired people who worked for Industrial Light and Magic, and a producer. Yeah, I guess the director had recently worked for Industrial Light and Magic, and then he was hired by George Lucas to direct this. He directed a few other movies, nothing that I recognized.
Oh, and the big thing is, like, the only reason a lot of people know about the movie is the myth that Drew Barrymore plays Cindo.
She doesn't even look like Drew Barrymore. I don't know why.
Well, when you look at the cover, and she has,
so.
The headband on, and her hair, goes over her right eye or whatever, and kind of, looks like Drew Barrymore,
I guess so.
But, yeah, I see how people get that misconception.
It's not bad. Once they actually get into the plot, they get the medicine. The boy gets bit by a snake, so he's a little bit more humble after that point. Some giant weasel bear monster chases them down through the woods when they try to escape the Ewoks. For some reason, they didn't try to escape the Ewoks.
He's like a crazy wild boar guy.
And they used some stop motion animation that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting any kind of a budget behind this. So the fact that they were able to do that convincingly well. And the monster itself has some, pretty unique characteristics. And then the Ewoks show up the next morning, and they're having, an all-out fight with it. Which, again, even though it was done with rear projection, it's convincing enough. And it was shot in a way that it doesn't... The effects don't stay their welcome long enough to become bad. You know what I mean? Where it's you just get kind of little glimpses of the monster as you go. And then there's kind of a little hilarious thing where one of the Ewoks jumps on its back, and the stop motion for that is it's noteworthy.
Were those things actually will-o'-the-wisps? Or I know we're not there yet, kind of, but were those will-o'-the-wisp things actually called will-o'-the-wisps?
I don't know. They were little fairies.
Because I'm reading the Neverending Story right now because I just got it. I'm reading it for the second time, and I think there's will-o'-the-wisps.
Yeah, will-o'-the-wisps. Yeah. Well, they're will-o'-the-wisps.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm just imagining that, but I'm pretty sure there are but they're called will-o'-wisps.
Yeah. So they're a natural phenomenon, and they're suspected to be swamp gas ignitions. So people would see little lights in the distance while traveling through marshy areas. and assumed that they were ghosts or spirits, because obviously, like, you don't expect to see little glowing lights in the middle of the forest. But yeah, that's where they're found in a lot of media like that. And they're also like fairies, comes from the same lineage. So they did find little fairies at some point. And yeah, there's this whole thing. They have to find their parents. This is what the whole movie's about. 2 kids teaming up with some Ewoks.
Oh, by the way, the little girl felt better in the morning after she took more medicine.
Yeah, medicine just makes everything better. Oh, and we never addressed the fact that the kid got his hand bitten by some weird kind of creature. They were just like, oh, your hand's swollen. He's like, I'm fine. And I thought that was going to lead somewhere. Doesn't lead anywhere. He's just like, oh, I'm fine. That's cool. Glad we had this talk. Glad you're dumb and try to grab weird animals out of trees on an alien planet.
We actually used to reenact the arm thing all the time. That's why I got excited until I cut to the childhood memory part.
I mean, I guess it's a good lesson.
I think I'm trying to remember what we did. I think like we just like stick our arm behind a tree and someone would just yank it.
Yeah, so they go on. They decide they want to go find their parents. There's weird magic elements in this movie that aren't really Star Wars-y elements. The Ewoks have like different types of magic, but they're more very fantasy-esque.
It just reminds me of the very end of like I almost said The Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi.
Well, yeah, that's where the Ewoks
where
are.
Like Obi-Wan Kenobi comes back and he's a ghost.
Well, yes, but when you're talking about like Jedi magic, like obviously Jedi are space wizards, you know, but that is a more kind of a symbolic, and it's one thing to have a Jedi, and like so the Force is like well understood, basically. You know what I mean? Like this is something that you can. It lives in all things, and you can use it to push, pull, move objects, and also in some ways predict the future. There was no
Force.
Right.
There was no Force.
They didn't talk about the Force. They didn't mention the Force. But then there were weird little magic elements where they're just like, and then this rock can turn a mouse into a
Oh, yeah. There was magic.
Yeah.
The magical lake. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. So, anyway, they go on their little journey. Each one of them gets a different thing. The kid gets a stone. None of them know what the different things do. So there's like a stick, a stone. The girl gets a candle. So anyway, the first thing the boy does is walk up to a lake, see his reflection, and for some reason decides to like poke the water. Like he doesn't go down to like drink the water, or he doesn't like try to go swim in the water.
He's just trying to poke it to see the ripples.
Like yeah, he like just leans over, pokes the water, and he's under the water now. It magically teleports him into the water with an effect that's fine, whatever. So the rest of the Ewoks and the sister are like playing. And so there's, you know, some added tension because, oh no, and then they see him. So all the Ewoks run over to the lake. They all start trying to help him. And no matter what they throw in the lake, the rope, it all disappears and goes to the bottom of the lake.
And then the one Ewok comes along.
Who has the staff. Got the stick.
Yep.
And saves him from the lake. And then he's like, oh, you saved my life. And I think that's really like when you're supposed to understand that he comes around to the Ewoks, you know. He stops, you know, being a dick to most of them. Then they walk. There's a lot of walking. Then they find a bunch of the fairies that we were talking about, the little wisps. They start attacking their tent in the middle of the night. So the little girl comes outside with the magic item she's been given is a candle. She lights the candle. They all fly into the candle. One's left behind. They pick it up. They throw it in their pocket. They're like, hey, he's cute. There was a nice effect. They did, I think it was animated, but it looks pretty convincing with the way that they did the lighting in the actual shots so that the lights actually reflect where the wisp is supposed to be. It was pretty convincing, especially for the time. And obviously, again, this didn't have a huge budget behind it. Yeah, no, I was like, okay, that's an effect that works.
What was the director's name again?
John Cordy. So John Cordy directed it. And yeah, so John Cordy directed it. Apparently, he also directed a movie called Once Upon a Time and Tarzan of the Apes. I guess he was a friend of George Lucas at the time. And then he also had his friend Bob Caro, Carrau, work on it. I guess they both wrote the screenplay together. Apparently, they were the last intensive stop-motion animation work done by ILM was for this movie. So that's interesting. Like I said before, George Lucas had a direct hand in the producer's chair. He was the one who kind of put this all together. So it's interesting to me that this is kind of George Lucas canon, even though by the time he got around to the prequels and stuff, he had he went all kinds of crazy.
Do you realize how semi-difficult it's going to be to find a thumbnail for this? This is a double feature DVD that I bought for the podcast, and it's got, so...
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get random pictures of Ewoks out of context, and I'm just going to use those throughout the entire video.
Great.
Yes. So, all of the pictures you've been seeing up to this point have nothing to do with what we're actually talking about. I just found pictures of Ewoks, probably not even related.
Aren't you glad you wasted your time hearing us talk about what you're looking at on the screen?
I'll see if I can find any from like comic book conventions. I'll throw them up right here. Yeah, anyway, it's a cute movie. Obviously, it ends with them going on. It's a dungeon quest. They have to break into this dungeon with the other Ewoks, all using their magical tools that they've been given. They finally come across the parents being guarded by a giant. It's a giant.
Yeah.
They used some stop motion. They also used miniatures pretty effectively. Like, no one effect really took me out of the movie except for a couple of map paintings towards the end. Actually, some of the map paintings were really good. There was a couple times I paused it, and I was just like, I said to Nick, like, you can't see where they composited the shot. Like, they did such a good job. I was wondering if...
You can't see, like, spatial anomalies.
Right. Like, normally there's some blur or there's, like, a black line around. And there were in a couple shots, especially in the cave. It was much more noticeable.
I mean, you can see them. You can discern where they are, but it's very difficult to notice.
Yeah, there was a couple of them that I was genuinely, like, not sure how they shot it and which parts were actually in camera. I guess it was all probably in camera. I guess they probably did a forced perspective thing. So anyway, they find the parents, and then by the time you're at the final third of the movie doesn't really care that much anymore. It kind of rushes through things, climbing a giant spider web and killing the spider using another one of the magic items.
I was like, it's Sean's worst enemy.
It's a giant spider. Yes, I would be terrified of a giant spider. The final boss, the giant, who I guess like he's reminiscent of the Rancor monster. He's really just like a giant gorilla with a pig nose. They do a pretty good job of showing the scale of him against the Ewoks. They have some nice little effects that really sell that he's a giant in this cave. They do kill one of the Ewoks, which was surprising. I didn't think they'd kill anybody.
Yeah, the death scene. They had to slip one in.
And it doesn't work because we don't really know these Ewoks other than he could throw an axe and he was generally brave. So anyway, he gives the boy the axe and then they kill the monster with the laser rifle that works sometimes. It doesn't work other times. Whenever they need it to work, it works. So the mom shoots it with the laser rifle. It falls off a cliff. I think it's the end of the movie. And then as they're about to go meet up with the little girl, the monster climbs back up the ravine, which the monster falling down the ravine was a really funny effect. And they do it twice. I guess they were really proud of that effect. So anyway, he comes back. The boy throws the axe that the dead Ewok gave him, saves the day. They all go home. They have a few beers, and they never escape the Ewok planet. And the Ewoks eventually eat them.
Yep.
It's really, it's a tragedy.
Actually, their parents find them.
Yeah, they're probably fine. Yeah, everything probably worked out. There's a sequel, so. But yeah, no, I didn't mind watching.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, see you later, bro. I didn't mind watching this. Nick made me watch this, but after about 20 minutes, I was into it, and I think that if you're a Star Wars fan.
Hi, I am Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
You want to talk about Ewok Adventures?
I have a bad history with Ewoks. My name is Paul. Paul.
All right, Paul.
Paul. Paul. Paul is in your wall. He's always in the wall. Paul.
So if you enjoyed that, you'll probably enjoy Ewok Adventures, because Ewok Adventures is slightly more interesting than saying Paul into a microphone 100 times.
It's kind of stupid because I know one Paul, and now I'm going to be like haunted by that the rest of my life.
You think Paul is going to be like, "You talked about me on this podcast, now I'm coming for him"?
No, because I'm like, he's not really my friend. So he's just like a public acquaintance.
Well, he might not even know. He might think he's not that Paul. He might think he's your friend, and then now he's going to be insulted, or he's going to be like, "Ha, I know I'm the only Paul.
Paul is my friend. Paul, you're my friend. I love you, Paul.
I love you, Paul." This one goes out to Paul. Man, this really went off the rails.
It's great.
So, Ewok Adventures, watch it or don't. How old is this movie?
If you like this, we'll be back for the sequel.
If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. We're still going to come back. So go ahead.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter either way.
Hit that dislike button because, it's what we're doing now.
If you don't build the Ewoks' trust, you just won't be able to do anything.
C-3PO had to pretend he was a god to build Ewok trust. Like, he literally had to, levitate Luke, fly him around the room, and convince them that they did this. I wonder if this is supposed to take place before that, or if it's supposed to take place after. And they're like, "Oh yeah, humans, they're cool. They blew up that giant moon base and killed all the white people. The stormtroopers are the white people."
All right, I'll see you later, man.
All right, I'll see you later, bro.
I don't know who I am. I'm Steve, and I have amnesia. I think we've gone too far.
No, you did. I'll edit some of this out, and then the rest of it will stay in. This has been Ewok Adventures.
Shaking On 2009. All rights reserved.
All rights reserved.
If your company is Shaking On, by the off chance that there's some trucker that
like a Shikanon, and they're like a waste disposal company that nobody knows about, and they're going to sue us for copyright infringement. We're like, we are proud members of the Shikanon family. We've been disposing of waste for 45 years. You know?
Yeah.
All right, Nick and Sean,
2001.